This is Mongolia Mindset, and today we're going to be interviewing my longtime friend Leon here, man. He has been one of the most impactful persons I have been in the community with. He was one of the first people to welcome me into the YouTube community, and I can't say enough about this guy, I swear. It's always an INFP pushing me to the top, man. He's always been a big time supporter. He's helped me with a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't even know about. So you guys know we do Inside the Mind. We've had Sad on, and now we're interviewing Leon because he does have a YouTube channel as well called Type Tips. That he does a lot of
Yes, and
stuff.
also have another channel too.
Yeah.
I still have two channels. Type Tips is my channel on personality types. I haven't been posting on there for a while, but right now I'm working on another channel, which is my mental health and spirituality channel, and that's where all my stuff, I'm really working on that channel right now.
And if you guys don't aren't aware, you guys know I always talk about there are INFPs out here with big degrees, and Leon is one of them, right? Leon has a master's. Um, he's also talked for TED Talks as well. So he has a speech on there, a whole thing. So just shout out to that because you guys know INFPs can really struggle to get out there and voice their opinion. But Leon has conquered his own fears and got out there. And he does have his psychotherapist. I think he still does a meetup every Tuesday, is it? Is it every Tuesday?
Yeah, I have a bunch of meetings. So like I run workshops on Tuesdays,
Mm-hmm.
just mental health coaching, life coaching workshops. I also do some on Thursdays. I do like spiritual growth discussions. I do a spirituality social group that meets in person in New York City too.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, like Leon is the guy, man. Leon is my guy, man. And like if you want to look into more of that mental health stuff with Leon, he addresses paranoia, depression, ADHD, all of those facets, but from a more of a therapist point of view. So I would definitely reach out to Leon. He has a website where you can book things through him as well. But you guys, and he also posts
Yes,
a lot of
yeah,
articles.
I make a lot of articles about mental health
Yeah,
as well, mental health and spirituality. So you want to check
we
that
should put
out,
we
please
should put
do.
that in the description. Yeah,
Yeah,
make
and
sure
I
to post
recently
that.
I've finished writing a book. I'm looking to publish it. It's
Oh,
about how
shit.
you could find finding peace from seeking perfection in life. That's the main theme of it, and ways that you could meditate on finding inner calm for
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
basically, the idea is like I've struggled with mental health problems before, such as depression and social anxiety, but I've been able to find my own inner calm over time. And basically, the book is about how I was able to do that and how you could do that for yourself,
Yeah, yeah.
regardless of whatever you have.
And that was one of the big things I wanted to address in this video. And I've noticed for INFPs, my best friend's an INFP, um, she seems to be way more content with life, where I have this restless feeling as though like I just have to keep going and keep like attaining things until I die. And she has this feeling where she doesn't have to do that. And I wanted to tap into Leon, what do you think that is? Like, why is it that INFPs can just be content and like maybe it's something with gratitude or something. They're just grateful for everything that they have. But could you explain that or
hmm
go into like what's going on there for you guys?
Well, it might depend on the INFP, but certainly on the outside, we appear very calm and still and content. And maybe we don't activate ourselves enough to be able to take action. I think it's because the difference between us is that our child function is introverted sensing,
Hmm.
and yours is extrovert sensing. So yours is a more activating kind of function, and ours is not. So introverted sensing seeks peace and comfort. And so what that does is that it can lead an INFP to stagnate if they indulge in their child function
Hmm.
a lot of the time, but it's not going to feel comfortable actually. So outside it looks like contentment, but it's actually could cause discomfort because it's almost like a comfort zone
Hmm.
to stay in.
Hmm. And just going more into that, like, for me, achievements is very important. For an INFP, it's almost like they're okay with, you know, not being focused on being the best, you know. Could you like go into like why that FI in the hero spot makes you like value different things, or like you have this different inner self-worth, or uh how you go about valuing your own like achievements?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like yeah, on the outside, yeah, INFPs are they look very content or almost Zen-like, right? But that could lead to problems and struggles down the road. I think comparatively, when I look at the different types, I mean, I live in an intentional community, so there's actually like I live with a bunch of people living together, almost like
Hmm.
a co-housing situation. I can see how different types operate. INFPs are generally like a bit more of a background type, right? So
Hmm.
the ENTJ is like in charge, right? So more at the forefront. INFP is more in the background, right? So that's something that I do notice, and maybe the functions lead to that tendency. I think introvert feeling is internal, so it kind of focuses a lot on things that cannot be easily expressed or put out to the world, and maybe an INFP would have a lot of caution in putting things out to the world too. There's a lot of things that I think if even if you look at the letters, they're not focused on putting things out there.
Hmm.
Introversion, um, intuition, feeling versus thinking, and also perceiving. So I think, if you're J, certainly, or you're extroverted, if you're judging, if you're extroverted, and you're mm, EJs, they want to kind of get some sort of message out there. Like they're almost like impelled to tell people what to do or how to think, right? Or they have some sort of message. Um, and you could take that to extreme. It could become like a fault. Like maybe they're not like absorbing enough from the outside and taking in, and they might be imposing their ideas. And like an IP is different. They want to be more to themselves and individualistic, and almost it get to an extreme, it can be almost like a hermit. And the problem is lack of influence, right, or lack of impact on others, which is something that is valuable to do.
Hmm. And can you just walk us through um, how you go through your day to day with introverted feeling in the hero slot?
I think while introverted feeling, it kind of wants to reflect and process a lot. So a nice outlet is to do journaling. I think that's a great thing for anyone to do, particularly in INFP, to be able to write what's on their mind, their feelings, to process things, because they're ultimately a highly reflective type, right? Um, when I go about my day, I try to keep a balance. I think it's good. I always try to think about how I could activate my system. So I'll make sure that there's something that I'll be waking up to, like, a meeting, for example, right? Or at least like meeting somebody or doing work, right? So I think something needs to be in place to keep the system active so it doesn't like introvert sensing doesn't take over, right? You end up feeling better when you do that,
Mhm.
right? And other types, maybe like an ENTJ, maybe sometimes you guys need to slow down too, or else you'll go to the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you said that like you have some type of TE to get you to get going because you're
Right.
kind of like trying to avoid the child function at FISI loop. And I think with the FISI loop, you can stagnate and I've seen from you, you're a high performing INFP. There's no doubt about
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So
Thank you.
um,
Yeah, it goes with I guess introverts would be better balanced when they go into an extrovert direction. So extrovert intuition, extrovert thinking, that would be getting your ideas out there. So I think INFPs would have a lot of ideas, but they keep those ideas to themselves. So being able to vocalize them and act on them. You don't have to act on all of them, but I think it'll make things more interesting for you. But I think there's introverts may kind of focus on delaying or talking down on their own ideas or thinking, waiting for some sort of more perfect moment. But like, it's just more fun to get your stuff out there.
Yeah. And what part of yourself do you feel people never see or understand?
I think INFPs, it's hard for people to see them because it almost seems like introvert feeling eclipses their personality. So you almost, if you look at extrovert feeling, they're expressive, right? So you feel like they're putting their feelings on their sleeve, so you know where they're at, um, or kind of know where they're at because they're also like very diplomatic too, and maybe they don't necessarily share everything that's on their mind. But like, an INFP, the feeling is actually fairly intense, can be fairly or have conviction or has a lot of complexity to it, lying underneath. Carl Jung describes an introvert feeling type as someone who's it's the phrase he uses is still waters run deep
Hmm.
regarding introvert feeling types. So there's a lot more that's under the surface, but it's not it doesn't come out to the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a thing that people misunderstand about INFPs and ISFPs is outwardly they can look like an ISTP, but inwardly they're really like, feeling all these emotions or whatever. And they really only share that with select few people, or maybe like through their art or things of that nature. So like you really gotta like actually tap into the INFP or ISFP to really get that outpour a lot of times. Um, Zara, anything?
Like to that point, like when you're making like a decision, how does FI really impact you? Like, and how do you weigh like where you want to go?
Oh. Um, so to answer that question, so you're talking about introvert feeling regarding to the decision-making process. So I think
Hmm.
introvert feeling is a process that's very idealistic and probably prone more
Yes.
to fantasy too, as well. Or there's idealism. The criteria, if you could call it criteria, are more intangible criteria that's hard to put into words, right?
Hmm.
So it's not like conventional decision making, I guess, where you could know how to check off some sort of boxes that are concrete. Um, yeah, but it's decisions are made by whether something resonates or is internally congruent. And they feel how congruent something is at an emotional level. So it feels just right. And we notice when things are off, right? So it doesn't, even though outwardly it might fit criteria, there's something that's off about it. So um, the approach is a lot more subtle, right? Um, yeah, and if it's taken to extreme, then it's hard to make outward decisions because things ultimately you need to make it concrete in some sort of way to execute it out in the external world. But also, I
Uh-huh.
think people who like, if they don't use introverted feeling, they might do something they think is correct or right, but it's actually not if you really pay
Yeah.
attention to how you feel about it, because something is so the idea is like something is off about it. It's not congruent or not true to oneself.
Okay. What do you think people misunderstand about FI?
What do people misunderstand about introverted feeling? Um,
Yes.
I think it's a fully valid way of looking at the world. So Carl Jung, when he writes about introvert thinking and also introvert feeling types, what he says is that these two are often misunderstood, and they themselves, because they're rejected from society, that they don't value their own primary function like an extrovert would value their primary function. So they kind of downplay it. But it's actually just another valid way to look at the world. And what he recommends, Carl Jung recommends, is that they actually have as much confidence in their first function as an extrovert is.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, we talked about that on the channel a couple times. I've always said I think the INFPs has the hardest life. Like if you were to rate like a video game or something, very hard mode would be INFP, right? Easy mode would be TE Dom, that's the easy mode life. And but it hurts them in the development category, right? Because if everything's easy and it's given to you, then you don't work on the things that you should work on. While the INFPs on very hard mode, they learn to work on everything. So a lot of times INFPs will be super developed, um, but I would just want to talk about FI again. What I've noticed about FI is that people, and I haven't released this video, but I'm working on this video of the under like how every function understand consequences. And for FI, it knows the consequences of betraying yourself because it's almost like a rock being eroded by wind. You know, slowly but surely, every time you don't do what's congruent with you, you slowly but surely lose a piece of yourself, and then maybe one day you'll wake up and be like, who the hell am I? Or like, what won't I ever do? Right. I think for myself, when it comes to I tend to say, do not put me in a position to where the best move ends up hurting you or something because you're gonna get knifed, like because I always think in the best move, what's the best move on the board, and I really don't care about how I feel about things. So I kind of have this bad feeling with FI when it's like, please don't put me in that situation. Just don't put me in that one. But what would you say um, is a way that you understand what you value, or what have you seen through your life that you resonate with or value? Um,
Mhm. Well, I think it's helpful for an INFP or any introvert to have external experience to really determine things. So, something that Carl Jung would say is that introvert functions are more abstract. So, it's based on internal archetypes. So, INFPs feel out internal archetypes, but um, it's hard to actually be congruent if you don't actually have or know how you actually feel about things unless you're out in the world experimenting, kind of like an expert being a bit more trial and error and just kind of asserting yourself more out. Then it's really the mixture of that external world plus internal world that really leads to a real understanding of who you are. So a lot of INFPs may like fantasize who they are or think they know who they are, but without experience, then it's not true. It's all like an abstraction in their head about how they feel about things. Well, you were talking about like INFP being on hard mode, so I think something that has really developed me was going to living in New York City. I think I told Mercer this before that Manhattan is ENTJ heaven.
mhm.
So like living in ENTJ heaven, but a bit INFP hell in Manhattan. It's something that's really has led to a lot of self-development because you always have to like in Manhattan, you always have to think ahead. Everything's like you plan things, you think ahead. You have to think a few steps ahead, and in order to make things work, and you have to assert yourself too. And things are about goals and where you're going. So it's very good for my self development. I kind of feel like I'm playing a video game when I'm in Manhattan. Like I'm like Mario and I'm getting all the coins like this.
Mhm.
So because it's like then I get to be more in TE mode. I also get to um use extrovert intuition too, because then you have to be kind of clever and think how to like think on your feet quite a lot. You also need to know how to like present yourself too. So more of the extrovert sensing stuff. So um I've been like when it comes to dating, like I have a friend who's an INFP too, and he dresses like a slob basically. So it's like you're out and about, you have to
That's
know
trickster.
like what works here is like a bit more expert
Yeah,
sensing.
yeah,
So
that's
so
trickster.
we went to the mall, like get some good clothing, you have to look sharp.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I've noticed with INFPs, man, you guys tend to dress like the 1940s
Yes,
type
especially the
style,
woman.
like the 1940 styles. Like the guys will
Yes.
be over, like they have like a shirt and then like a jacket and then all that. Every time you see an INFP, it's almost like they're from the 1940s. It's
That's a good point because not all, some INFPs maybe like sometimes I'm like this myself. Like we kind of like just dressing for comfort, almost like you're at home. Like I'm at home right now, so I'm just
Well,
like
it's
this.
not like
Yeah.
comfort. It's like a traditional,
Yeah.
like like it's just like I just
I, I
know
I
like
know
it's
what
like
you
when I
mean.
think about Mr. Rogers, it's like they dress like that, Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
not that type of INFP, but I know what you're talking about. There's different kinds of INFPs and some are actually stylish,
yeah, yeah.
but in the 1940s kind of way.
It's all good. Sorry, anything?
Like what parts of the INFP personality in particular, if you want to expand on this a bit, do you feel is mislabeled or mischaracterized to you by others?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think INFPs could get kind of mixed up with some other types. So like maybe
Yeah.
because INFPs are like their FP and introvert feeling is associated with self-expression. They get mixed up with types that are actually very outwardly self-expressive. So ENFPs are more likely to be outwardly self-expressive. So ENFPs actually they talk about their emotions more. They kind of wear a bit more on their sleeves. I think so that's why they get mixed up with INFPs because they see the introvert feeling being like expressed, but actually INFPs, so this kind of goes a bit into socionics, where INFPs, they have a role function, which is introvert thinking, kind of like what Merce is talking about. The INFPs and ISFPs, they almost look like an ISTP. That's what Mercer said before. So the emotions are not like very out there. They actually, INFPs appear very, very calm and subdued. And the ones, people who are like expressive and you see them talking about themselves and their emotions more. That's like more like ESFP or like an ENFP,
ENFP.
but not like an ISFP or INFP.
They're very the ISFP and INFP are very, laid back with it. Like they tend to be what I would say is like it's a difference with functions being in the hero slot versus the parent slot. And if it's an extrovert, it tends to be very sloppy a lot of times. If it's an extrovert, their parent function seems to be a lot more sloppier than it would be compared to the introverted personality,
Hmm.
and not as out there as much,
Well, I think it's
and
like the
adjustable. It's
extroverts
way
are
more
not,
adjustable.
yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't take as
the
much time.
extroverts are not as they're not as perfectionistic about their second function.
Mm-hmm.
So they just kind of like throw it out
Yeah,
there
throw it out. Yeah.
a bit more. So imagine like an INTJ or INFJ, they want to get the NI just right or perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So not just so, but I think like an ENFJ or ENTJ are more likely to share like what their vision is
I
to the
think a
world.
big thing about them is they're more likely to shift it around, right? If it's not working, they'll shift it around. While INTJ will be more focused on that one particular vision, while an ENTJ will be like, okay, this vision ain't working, chip it, because it's in the parent slides. It's not the core presence of that person, right?
Mm.
So they can,
Yeah, it's
ship
not
it
the
around.
essence for
Yeah.
sure.
But for you, um, we know, and I know you get it pretty tough, but a lot of people, when they look at INFPs, they get the stereotypes of like, not being intelligent. But I've seen actually the opposite of that. I've noticed that INFPs are, usually pretty intelligent people, and I think they can like trick a lot of people into like mistyping them because of that. Um, th-
Yeah, I think that that helps answer Zara's question, right? Well, um, I think when it comes to our lower functions, we might actually, very much have those functions, but we are very hesitant to express them externally. So it's like I do have thoughts, but it's like I don't necessarily prioritize sharing those thoughts, like
mhm.
especially like I think INFPs are very like often, excuse me for a moment. INFPs are often people-pleasing types, so um they kind of adjust themselves to how the other person is saying, and maybe they give the other person more of the microphone when they're, but they do have their own thoughts, but that extra thinking is deprioritized.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I would say not the I wouldn't say the word thinking so much as I would say reasoning. They're not so out there to share their reasoning for everything, right?
Right.
While higher thinking types are more likely to be, you know, more expressive of their own reasoning. I think another thing is like when you said people pleasing, I would say harmony seeking is a better word, because they really care about harmony. Like because if there's too much disharmony, then maybe their FI might get trampled or something like that. So
Hmm.
maybe they're looking at it from that perspective. But what would be like your best advice for a INFP who is trying to get better or like dealing with depression?
Oh, trying to get better or dealing with depression.
Maybe they're
Yes,
stagnating or something.
yeah. Well, I would recommend that whenever there's a depression, the depression is trying to tell you something, right? So it's important to listen to how you feel. So my experience with depression before, and any type get depressed is depression is telling you basically something's not working in your life, right?
Hmm.
So it's not necessarily completely, it's not a bad thing because before that depression, maybe you're just ignoring what is not working, and therefore you feel fine. You find maybe then back your mind you think something's off, but you feel fine. And this is true for any type actually. If you get depressed, but if you're starting to be depressed, then your mind's telling you that there is something missing and there's something that you need and it's not being addressed.
Hmm.
So so it's important to kind of be able to give voice to how you feel, and writing is just a really great way for anybody. But I think INFPs are very they're a type that gets their thoughts and feelings down on paper. Right? I think
Hmm.
that's a really good avenue for them to be able to express themselves and work through their feelings. And also, like, it's good to try to find a bit more of balance of your introvert. Anybody who's depressed are gonna withdraw, but I think if you're introvert, you're gonna especially do that.
Hmm.
Um, I think when it comes to intuition, if intuition types are unhappy, I think partially has to do with some sort of like egotism in regards to like valuing abstractions over real life. And so it's good to kind of make your experience a bit more concrete and attend to the day to day. If it's like feeling versus thinking, I would say like just over time. Yeah, I think this is actually a good one piece. If you go overboard with feeling, then everything's about how you feel internally, and that's going to make you feel depressed because you get absorbed into this big emotional state without reality testing. Or I think but that's where CBT comes in, where you check your reality with a rationale. Does it make sense, right? Does this make sense? What's a constructive way to look at the situation? So that's thinking. And then there's judging, of course, like having like some sort of structure or some sort of system is gonna be better than just like kind of like letting yourself go. So people, I guess, when they're depressed, they're gonna uh appear like perceiving types, but I think if you're INFP, then that's going to go not that well if you're like kind of like letting yourself go. I guess for judging types, maybe it'll help them to be more with the flow if they're depressed, learn how to be more with the flow. But um for like INFP, it'll be helpful to have more structure.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've kind of noticed that usually when someone's depressed, there's usually something going on with the hero function. It's not being accepted or like it's not being attuned to or whatever you want to call it, but there's usually something going on there. And I think for INFPs, they can, find that, maybe their values aren't being accepted, right? Or they're stuck in a world that doesn't seem to fit them. Um, so.
Yeah, that's that's true. So like I guess INFP, since it's not a very user-friendly type, so I'm in this INFP avatar, and uh you have to like really learn how to use it, right? So you feel out of place, you're going to feel like you're depressed, and
Hmm.
you might not value your primary function. Um, what happens is that then you go into your shadow. But what I mean by shadow in this case, I mean like it'll be like a negative form of expert thinking. And
Hmm.
so maybe like it starts to become too much of an emphasis on judgment or like critically looking at the world or the people around them.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's another important thing. What I've noticed is that, John Beebe's eight function model, people get trapped in those energies. So, like, if you see somebody who takes more of a heroic stance, they're usually in their hero function. If you see somebody taking more of a child role, they're usually in the child function. If you see somebody that's being very critical, nasty to others, kind of like policing, usually critic. So like you can kind of, or somebody's like being like very like depressed or demonic is usually the demon function. But you can kind of see these energies play out in people, and then when you notice those energies play out, you can kind of see what's going on. I've been talking about that on the channel for a while now. Um, but yeah, Zara, anything?
Um, I guess to that point, if you with your with the intense feeling from introverted feeling, um, how would you recommend INFPs break out of that grip when their internal feeling isn't adjusted to reality?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Carl Jung writes about introverted feeling. The problem when there's
He's
excess
back.
of introvert. Oh, did he disappear?
Yeah, you just keep going. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So the problem. Oh, unfortunately, because I wanted to answer his question. No.
I
So
mean, yeah, go for it.
go for it.
Yeah.
So with introverted feelings, so Carl Jung writes about the functions when they're in extreme, and when he writes about introvert feeling, what he states is that it becomes feeling to the nth degree. So
Hmm.
like he writes, it's feeling for feeling's sake. So um, feeling becomes so much of an abstraction, then it's almost like an empty kind of feeling.
Hmm.
It's almost very self-loving and self-absorbed and very senseless in that degree. So it almost fairly much becomes inauthentic
Hmm.
then because you need in order to um in order to realize your function or you need to be able to balance it out with the opposite. That's a way to make it real or to reify it. You need in order to have thinking, you need to have feeling, or else,
Yeah.
because thinking is about like you want to like understand what things mean and clarify what they are. But if you're not in touch with your emotions, then you can't do that at a deep level. It's all going to be
Hmm.
like superficial, right? Because you need to like empathize with emotions to not only fully understand people, but also situations.
Hmm.
So your thinking actually improves when you incorporate feeling because your understanding, your clarity is going to be sharper with the emotional empathic understanding. So with feelings, the same thing. It's like if you're like all feelings, but if you're not like objectively trying to delineate the world, then it's going to be conviction for no reason.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's not based on anything, so it's not
So you're
real.
making subjective assessments essentially, and you're essaying things that are intangible, and it isn't aligned with reality, and that creates a
Right,
huge disconnect.
right. And feelings about, especially introvert feelings about alignment with yourself. So that's an important question for every person to
Yeah.
consider is like how do things relate to you or to people or to another person? Or otherwise all the things you think about are going to be in some way irrelevant, right? If it's not related to people in some sort of way.
Yeah.
So, but like if you take introvert feeling to an extreme, then you're relating everything to yourself, right? And you're not trying to understand other things for their own the sake of understanding things. And it's going to be like almost like you're in a warped mirror view of you're in this room full of mirrors, and your perception's just very twisted.
Hmm. Yeah, I think what you're describing is called one-sidedness
Right.
from Carl Jung, and that's when you just we talk about on channels like you're doubling down on the hero function. We call it drunk with the punch. Like you've been
Right,
drinking on the hero function too much, and then you
right,
just got this warped sense of reality where you think it's like never wrong. So in
right.
that sense, I would say that, that they would an INFP might justify anything with basically how they feel about something or what they deem to be right, and they may be being very critical of other people who don't measure up to their standards. But they can also be taking in all of these extra emotions and feeling them as well. So you got like that's too much going on there. I think for me, I would see like if that was to happen, I would feel like the walls are coming in. Like all the
Right.
troops are coming in, like woo, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's important. What do you think is like how do you use and how do you view introverted thinking in response to your own introverted feeling? Like what is your thought process with that? Because your introverted feelings in the first slot and your introverted thinking is in the eighth slot. So how does your brain see that? Like is it saying like, okay, my values are first and I don't really care about logic? Or is it, maybe walk us through it from your perspective?
Okay, well, I do go by a socionics model. So what I would say is that introverts, they tend to push forward all their introvert functions.
Hmm.
And then there's some that are weaker. So introvert thinking is weak for INFP is weaker than their introvert feeling, but they still push forward their introvert thinking. So that's why on the surface we appear very like calm and collected and even keeled a
Hmm.
lot of the time. So that's how it's expressed. Like when we talk with introvert thinking types, we don't necessarily at first rub each other the wrong way. I think, if an INFP is in contact with someone who's extrovert sensing, right, that's polar, then that's gonna rub an INFP the wrong way to see extrovert sensing.
Hmm.
Um, but like introvert thinking, no, it's actually we're often like friends, right? So I think INFP is often friends with like um INTP. I think
Hmm.
INTPs are often roommates with ISTPs because we kind of like we don't like bother each other. We kind of we know we keep to each other's lanes basically. So it's not like a big clash or anything. And
No, but I wasn't talking
we
about with other people. I'm talking about with yourself. Like
yeah.
when you're
Well,
going through a process or something, like how does like your FI relate to TI? Like is it like, because I agree with what model you're saying. It's like whatever your hero function is, any function that lays on those functions will be strong. So like people wonder why INTJs have very strong TIs because introverted intuition, they're always using introverted intuition. Why they think like ENTJs have stronger FE because they're always using TE, like so they're always using an extroverted function. So they're strengthening extroverted functions. Um,
mm,
so I do
yeah.
agree with your model there. But
Yep.
I was just saying, like, how does it reverse into you, like personally? Like, okay, are you like, I need to be like, I don't care about what makes sense. It's about what makes me feel good or like what's in line with me. Like, how do you battle like when something doesn't make sense, but that also doesn't make you feel good?
Yeah. Well, it does still like tie to my first point because introvert thinking is not completely contrary to introvert feeling. The way I see it is they're both inward clarifying functions. So
Mhm.
like that's why if I'm around like a TI dom, it's like we have like a good conversation because we're both trying to inwardly clarify and not prioritize action, right? So that's like it's kind of like a similar kind of mode. Um, so usually when I'm talking with them, I'm trying to like understand how I'm feeling, and then they choose the right words, right? So it's not like completely contrary. It is contrary in the sense that I think they have their screws on too tight, so it's like the precision that they're looking for. They think it's accurate to them, but for me, it's off because it's too boxed up. If that makes sense. Like it doesn't like capture the essence.
Mhm.
So that's where we kind of we kind of fall out there is, but not initially and not for a long time because we're just like inwardly clarifying uh things. So it's like you with like maybe like an expert feeler, you both like giving a lot of like advice, right? So expert feeling, expert thinking, they give advice or they kind of have a way of approaching the world where this is how you do things, and you both have a greater tolerance for that. So
Well, yeah, I would
yeah,
say like I get like one of my good friends is Jerry. He's a extroverted feeling Dom. Um, I think what he does doesn't work, but at the same time, if it works, then like keep using it, you know.
right.
You know,
That's a very TE Dom way of saying like you have like the FE Dom friends and you and I think the TE Doms are like I could see how this is working. Like it helps like there's this person who's like taking care of the emotional atmosphere and it helps with the overall objective,
yeah, I mean,
right?
because I think a lot of times if you TE too much and too strong, then people like, they don't feel like the environment is great or like they just feel like they're a number. So you do have to throw them a bone. But I think Effie Doms throw too much bone,
Right.
too much bone, too much accommodation. And I think with that, it's impossible to get anything done, you know.
Well, that's one thing. It's too much. They do two things. Extra feeling Doms are they have that harmony in a way, like they as you say, kind of like throwing the bone, but also they like to create drama too. So it's almost like the opposite of that, where they like to deliberately like mess things up to spice things up in an environment. But that's a way to get people motivated, right? So that sometimes you have to kind of mess with people that way that extra feeling DOMs do. But it's also like it gets everything carried away because they kind of get so caught up in their emotions and those emotions spill out.
Yeah, I would say that because they're extroverted feeling and they're trying to understand other people all the time, then they always find themselves in some type of gossip or like
Right,
they know all this like stuff and they're like, then you kind of get pulled into like a certain group or something like that. Um,
right.
I, I just whatever. If it works for you, whatever. But yeah, yeah, I mean that makes sense. That you would think Ti Dom probably has their Ti on a little too tight and should loosen it up. And they would probably say the same thing about you. But I've noticed INFPs and INTPs do get along. Is there a type you don't get along with?
I think the more, you study typology, the more you get along with people because you kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
understand how they think, right? Because the types that I initially get along with, you start to run into problems because it's just like if I'm around um, a lot of INTPs and we have a lot to talk about, but you start to like really feel the passivity and it starts to become unnerving. Which, I'm kind of interested in how that works like for you because they're probably types you just like hit it off with, but then it's kind of becomes stressful because there's too much energy in the same direction, right? And then so like for me, like it's nice to be around different types because they every type provides something different. And the more you learn about typology, the more you get it. Like you get
Mhm.
um like for instance, like I've been learning from an ISTP recently about how he materially improves his world. He always looked at how things work and he finds the best quality stuff for his life, right? It's not like material stuff for his life. It's not a way that I would think. So he would talk about like he knows the best toothpaste. The best toothpaste is in Colombia. He knows the best shaving cream, and it's in Turkey. That's what he said. And so these are things I just don't think about. And it's like, but if I do think about oh, like actually improve my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think Christian's an ISTP. He really cares about balance. That's one of the things with ISTPs is the balance. Like they don't want to be too out of balance. Like, they're extremes and they don't want to be on the extreme of anything. More
Mm.
mellow. But anything you want to say, Zara?
I was just thinking about this. It seems like from what you were saying, to delineate this further, there's sort of a deciduum that happens with FI because it's like you got this stelliferous world inside, and then the world isn't aligned with that, and it's not adjacent towards their values and what they think is important to them. And I kind of wanted to touch a little further on that, but more so in a sense that how does this impact them and in more ways that we don't see this disconnect?
I mean, over time, it could probably lead to a lot of suffering, right? Because
Yes.
there's that not non-alignment with the world and how it works. Um, yeah, so it would impact that way. I mean, I think the world kind of expects more extroversion, um, and at least in a job environment, more like expert thinking and judging, right? And in the real world environment, there's more sensing. Of course, like there's just variety of different environments where you could stand out um, is you know your own type, right? But I think INFPs do have like something that is good is that if they're willing to get their voice out there, then they write a book and they understand people's feelings, so they could kind of when they write, and this is when I write, I kind of can know like how people will likely feel based on the writing and kind of get
Mm,
to people internally and be able to make that transformation come from within, like
yeah.
how to look in, how to look at the world in yes from a feeling perspective, but it's a valuable feeling perspective, and so a lot of like famous INFPs would be like a good novelists and poets because they're able to capture the feeling, a struggle. So INTPs, they I think they could put things into words better, like at least because they could actually they could think that the reality could correspond well with the words, or at least they could delineate the reality with the words. Like INFP feels like words can never really do that fully. But like INTPs may not like initially they may not write in a
Mm,
manner where they people could understand or they could internally resonate with what they're saying. So they're good at systems thinking like philosophy, right? And like maybe people they have a hard time attracting people to that material, right? But if if an
mm.
INTP is learns to focus on their extroversion a bit more and relatability, then they could do a pretty good job. Then when they clarify or define things, they make it so that people could understand.
So for you, writing vivifies your FI into the world.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So it's like paint, it's like the canvas you get to paint your world on.
Yeah, and I do like the idea of like painting because I think or writing because you could really take your time to like express yourself. So you could always do revisions and then eventually you perfect it, right? So I think some extroverted types that are into the arts, like an ESFP, they probably do really well with acting because they could get out there more in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it really depends. Like, you can have like great ESFP writers and great INFP actors too.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's probably the last one, but how do you deal with people with low morals?
Low morals.
Yeah, like how do you deal with people who don't have good morals or like don't care about morals or like how do you deal with that? Like
Yeah, that's a
what's
good
your brain
question.
process?
Um, I think there's different ways an INFP would deal with someone who has low morals. Is that the first one's almost like what I was mentioning before about the people pleasing. Like if the harmonizing is taken into a negative direction, then it becomes people pleasing, right? So you're just like kind of putting up with it. And then the extra intuition is probably like giving people a lot of chances or like it's being very open-minded and feeling prioritizes the caring, right? Rather than the logical reality,
Hmm.
right? So that's one way. The other way is it could be judging people too much without sufficient experience, right? Which could be actually like true for anybody could do that, but like there's introvert feeling type not going out in the world, and they're gonna have misconceptions about what's not moral, right?
Hmm.
Uh there's a lot of nuances to the world uh and you need in order to know that you need to get out to the world to really understand it. So that's an introvert's problem.
Yeah, I think that's a very any approach to things there. You're very open about it. That's a lot of things with INFPs, they'll be a little bit more open. But let's just say hypothetically you're around an ENTP and they got FI Trickster, they seem to always be up to no good, you know. So how would you deal with like a person who like that?
Oh, well, I think like understanding typology goes a very long way because they do say things that rub you the wrong way. Not just you, but like a lot of people. If it's like an extreme ENTP and they haven't developed their extrovert feeling, then they're gonna like say things. I think types that are stronger with extrovert thinking, like I know like extrovert thinking is associated with ESTJs and ENTJs, but like uh ENTPs, they have it strong, but they don't like really value it that much. But it's a socionics concept, right? Um, it's more in their shadow. Those types, like
This is
basically the
Mongolia
ET
mindset, and
types.
today we have one of our special guests. Hmm.
Oh,
Hi, Ron.
Yeah.
so
Hi, Ron.
so there's so any t type that's like ET with the letters, like ENTJ, ESTJ, ENTP, ESTP, they're more likely to like express their thoughts, like just like they get out what they're thinking
Hmm.
more. And then that might rub other types the wrong way. Um, and maybe especially types that are like stronger with introvert feeling. So just understanding that um, other functions have their value goes a very long way. And also, I think like, the more I understand ENTPs, they're not necessarily less moral, right? They could actually like ENTPs could have a lot of conviction. Like they tell you what's wrong with society. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, the way to go about it, they could be trolls about it, or they offend people, right? Or they're just like very blunt with what they think is the truth, right? And
Hmm.
they want to set off bombs, right? But
Yeah.
it's still like a, a system of morality. Like, if they're like a reasonably well, if they're like, I would say an average ENTP would still be moral, like, or a very well developed one. They still have I still think they're actually still fairly moral too. They have their own way of looking at the world, right? Which they tend to be very more blunt about, or they're more outspoken about, or so that I don't say that they're less moral than INFP. Like INFPs may appear like more moral in the sense of like showing more decency, right? But in terms
Uh-huh.
of like overall conception of how the world works and what's right or wrong, I don't think any type has like an upper hand. It's the ENTPs are like they do it. Their morale is just more outspoken. Like they just say it. They say it as it is. They're blunt about the
Well,
truth.
well, I would.
If they're a good ENTP.
I think the thing with ENTPs is they have FI in the trickster spot. So they're incongruent with staying with what's true or aligning with themselves. Why an INFP at the end of the day, they are aligned with who they are at all times, or they try to be.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, yeah,
so they're more likely to stick to the mean on it, while as an ENTP could be over here, over there, you know, because the FI
yeah.
is not in a good spot for them. It's in the worst spot to be in. But I think everyone has a basic level of what's right and what's wrong, but the more advanced version of FI they do not have. Um, so I was just wondering how that would affect somebody who has that in the hero spot, right?
I mean,
Because if
yeah,
I was to look at TE Trickster or NI Trickster, I got a bad feeling about that. You know, like what do you mean? Like, you know, like you can't just be accommodating everybody. Like you got to get stuff done. You got to put a system here. You got to, you know, like there has to be something here. Like what's going on here? I think it would rub me the wrong way. Um,
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
I mean, the way to look at it is like if it's an EP type, I think they have the equal capacity to be moral. It's more like in their initial stages they're almost like Tom Sawyer. So they just kind of go about do things almost impulsively, right? But
hmm
it's not like a wrong way of looking at the world. It's like another way, and it could a potentially moral way where they're more like open-minded about things,
hmm
whereas other types might be more like closed-minded. So I think maybe INFPs like on the surface maybe conventionally moral looking because of the decency and emphasizing kindness, right? But the overall like more global morality is more complex than that.
Hmm.
Because you could say like INFPs are honest with themselves in terms of like they want to be inwardly congruent. So that kind of goes more with genuineness. But as I said, like if you take that too far, it's not going to be genuine anymore because it's just going to be self-absorbed and abstract, and it can
Hmm.
be selfish in its own way. Like I think ENTPs, yes, they could be like immoral, like in terms of like how they may not like care about how people feel and they mess with people that way. But it's also like they're on equal footing when it comes to morality, in my opinion, because thinking is like it's honesty, it's truth. Like you're saying what's true, right? Of course, if you're not taking in enough information, then it's going to be twisted. But like thinking like ET types, they just say the truth or the honesty. They're being honest about it. Like the feeling types are kind of like almost like going around it a bit. And if it's taken too far, then it's actually immoral. And that makes
Mm,
sense. Because if you want to be moral, you need to speak to the truth. And ETs are more about like what's the logical truth or this is what's going on, right? And feeling is more about like like what's more genuine, right? And that's also is another form of truth that's also equally valid.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I just sort of like more of like, okay, so there's FI and there's FE. So FE is more of the ethics that's associated with everything, like a standard that everybody could agree on, like the Bible would be an FE
Right.
standard, right? And then there's FI where it's like I don't need the Bible to tell me what's good or bad. I go off my own moral compass inside of me. Um, so just looking at that, I could see like an INFP, getting becoming an outcast because they put their own morals and they don't agree with the real world's morals,
Right.
from that perspective. Where they,
Yeah,
they have their
it's yeah, that's how the INFPs yeah, they do operate that. It's not obvious on the surface because we keep quiet. So it's more like you need to kind of like observe us. Like I do live um unconventionally, right? But I present conventionally, right? There's some types that are just more outspoken,
Mhm.
right? So
mm,
like there might be an ENTP that um lives unconventionally, but they're they're often like the outspoken about it too, as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, yeah, I think they are pretty outspoken about like their suffering or what they're going through or what's wrong with the system. But I just was interested to see how somebody with like lower FI would pair with an INFP who, when it's your hero function, you really, it's the utmost importance to you. Almost like
Right,
you almost like want the world to be like me, you know. But I
right.
think maybe an INFP, like for you, I think it may be a little bit different because like we said, you live on very hard mode, you know. It's a lot easier to see that
Mm,
everybody's not like you. While like other people who have like TE or NI or something up there, it may be a little bit harder for them to notice not everyone's like them, or be like me syndrome.
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Any last things you want to say, Leon? We know you do psychotherapies on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Um,
mm,
you write a lot of articles. People can book you if they want to see you. When it
mm.
comes to like involving the human experience, right?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely the NF world.
Hmm.
Building people up and cultivating them and being a catalyst for them. But anything you want to drop, Leon?
Yeah. I'm like reading the book called The Artist's Way, and it's about how you could realize the inner artist within just by letting it out more, like being able to express yourself. I think a lot of uh everybody in general, they're kind of stuck in some sort of way. They're not willing to put themselves out there. But if
Mhm.
you're introverted, that's more so the case, right? You're keeping a lot of things within. So I think, when introversion t is taken too far, then um it's a bit too conservative or too serious. And it's important to kind of like almost like set it free and get your ideas out there. And one way is to not take them too seriously too. So that's something that I would recommend to people. And I would say like, yeah, I had it was very joyful experience being here, being able to talk about this.
Hmm.
It's fun. Definitely check out my channel. I like to talk about psychology in depth. So if you like what I'm saying here, then you're gonna like my channel.
Yeah.
And I appreciate being here. It's really cool to see all the work that Mercer is doing. I know I've just met Zara, so I don't know him that well, right? But I I think Zara, you have like some very insightful questions that, and Mercer has insightful questions too that really got me thinking deeply. And I'm like how you both are pursuing the subject matter deeply. You want to be able to help other people through getting all this material out there. I like the consistency. I saw like Mercer uh channel just basically come out of nowhere. So it's like
Yeah.
it's so cool just to see like to be able to see it rise.
Yeah. And Leon, man, like where could people find you, man? You got us let us know when people can find you and your website. I'm gonna put it in the comments, but where can people
Yeah,
find
yeah, I'll give you my
Yeah.
website and also my YouTube channel as well. And my website has my articles, my YouTube channel has all this material that I talk about in terms of psychology.
you? And are you still in New York?
Yes, I am, if you count Staten Island.
Okay.
Staten Island, we're low self-esteem New Yorkers.
Okay. And like you said, you do like a meetup. That's why I asked, were you still in New York? Like you do meetups and stuff.
Yeah, I do meet up. Some of my meetups are in person, so a lot of mine are online.
Mm-hmm.
But on meetup.com. But like I have ones, I have a spirituality social that meets in person,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, and I really recommend like Meetup as like as a platform because I started it last year, like this group last year, and now I have like over 1,000 members on
Oh
Meetup.
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. And
Mm.
what about like the Tuesdays? I know you're still doing the Tuesdays. I think 7 p.m. Was it 7 p.m. Eastern?
Yeah, it's 7:30.
Okay, so I was
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess I'll like also send you that too. I could send you links to my meetup groups.
yeah, yeah. So like he does meetups and I think you cover certain topics every time. Like
Yeah, different topics though. Like recently we've been going through the artist's way before we talked about the power of now, but I break them down into workshop material and we turn them into really big discussions.
oh, awesome, awesome,
Mm.
awesome.
Yeah.
So if you guys are ever free on Tuesdays at 7:30, you can log in with Leon.
Eastern
Um,
time.
Eastern time. Yeah, yeah. Fine.
Got it.
Yeah, I think yeah, he does a lot of stuff with the coaching and how to deal with things from depression to paranoid to ADHD to being social anxiety. And I think a lot of times people forget that a lot of times when you get advice from people, you don't want to get advice from people that haven't been there before or haven't started at the lowest peg or whatnot. If you get advice from somebody who's never had trouble, it's usually not going to be good advice because they haven't went through the nuances of how to get out of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that you get when you go to Leon, who's an INFP, is he's had to work these things out for himself, right?
Mm.
So that's usually where you want to get the best advice from. Like you don't want to
Mm.
get advice like just say hypothetical situation if someone's a Chad, right? You don't want dating advice from him. Dating advice is gonna be terrible. But you want to talk to somebody who's had to actually work through something. So I think that's the best part about Leon here, man. He's
Yeah.
dealt with it all from social anxiety. He told me about how he dealt with social anxiety. He talked about depression in this video. So you
Yeah.
guys reach out to him. Leon, man, it's been a pleasure. Sorry, any last words?
Yeah, it's excellent session. It was very I thought it was very riveting.
Yeah.
Um very very nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really, yeah, I felt like equally as you that this has been a very enriching conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Leon, man. We'll get you out of here, and thank you again, man, for coming on. And you've been absolutely wonderful for me. You've always been there in my corner, man. So appreciate it, man. And see you around, brother.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.